So the next area we're talking about is third-party tools and the kind of Google ecosystem. For those of you that don't know, there are kind of two types, or technically three types of Google partners. So there's sort of the resellers and service partners, and who provide services for customers and do all the wonderful things that Townsend does. And then there are ISVs, which are integrated service vendors. They're companies that basically make solutions that kind of augment the Google environment. And obviously Paul's tool, Patronum, falls into that category. Paul, maybe you could tell, just for the audience, why do we need, or why do we kind of need a third-party ecosystem, and what's the value for customers?
Yeah, well, I think predominantly, if you look at any solution out there, any product out there, whether it's Microsoft, IBM, Amazon, Google, there is a plethora of partners out there that are doing value adds to the product. So from a Google perspective, Google aren't going to do everything, and you wouldn't want them to do everything. So you're gonna need third parties to provide certain features that you wouldn't necessarily want to purchase within the base product. Backup's a great example. Some people, and for me, for a long time, I didn't really appreciate the benefits of a backup. You know, it's cloud, so it's secure, it's backed up. I don't really need to worry about it. I don't need to worry about it. It's only when people start leaving, or people start deleting, or you get ransomware, or something happens.
I think it's interesting. There are different kinds of solutions, you know, within, like you were saying, within the ecosystem. I think it's very necessary that we have them. And often you find like those broad solutions, like you were saying, like backup, but then you also have those niche, you know, things that like it's not worth Google to make a solution for some, you know, the law industry, or you know, some very specific industry. But with APIs, they can do that. What kind of tools do you kind of feel are the most popular that you've sort of seen, you know, other than the backup one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, backup for me is like number one, tick. Number two, management. Identity management, provisioning, deprovisioning, those kind of things. There's a good range of internet-based, you know, intranet-based solutions out there. Happier is a great example, where you know, CRM integration. So you know, the things that I like that third parties are doing is that they're taking a product that isn't Google, and they're bringing in the features from that product into the workspace. And so for me, you know, I love the fact that within Salesforce or any other CRM system, you can click on a particular email address, and then it goes off and shows you what's in the CRM system. It brings it all back, and it surfaces it all into a central location.
And I like the way a lot of those bring it into Gmail as well.
Absolutely,
you know, the side panel thing is brilliant. The other interesting one, the one that we see quite frequently as well, is that shared mailbox in Google. The shared mailbox isn't fantastic, and so tools like Hiver, and there's a whole bunch of others that sort of augmented the Gmail inbox to make it that kind of collaborative inbox.
No, definitely. From my perspective, I think one of the features that we get asked a lot about is contact sharing. You know, so from a Microsoft environment, apparently I've never actually seen the offering. You've got Outlook, and within Outlook you can share
a set of contacts.
Whereas within Google you've got delegated contacts, and so that's
your whole.
That's everything. So that's all my contacts. It's my personal contacts. It's my business contacts. It's everything is being shared. And so we do get a lot of organisations wanting that shared label experience, and so that's one of the benefits of the features that we've added to the Patronum platform.
Well, I mean, a simple one is like my customers. Like, here's a list of my clients, and I want this to sync with everyone's account. I mean, that's, you know, at its basic, most companies would want at least that. Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned Patronum, so that leads nicely into that.
It's almost as if I planned it.
It's almost as if you planned it, Paul. So, you know, what made you set up Patronum, and what were the kind of key challenges that you were trying to solve at the beginning, or when you started out?
Again, it's I think I mentioned earlier on today, the things that I do tend to be accidents. You know, I'd love to be able to say that
We won't tell your kids.
it's everything's planned. You know, I'd love to be able to turn around and say, you know, I've had this vision, and you know, this is what I wanted to do, and it's always been a great passion of mine to do this and the other. It's not. It's always been accidents, happy accidents around seeing something and then going, well, there's an opportunity there. So it may not necessarily just be something that I've fallen into, but opportunities have presented themselves. And so, you know, I've developed a migration tool because I saw there was an opportunity to develop and create a migration tool. I saw there was an opportunity to create a management tool, and I created a management tool. A few years ago, I wanted to create a backup tool, and so I created Patronum. So Patronum was a backup tool.
Interesting.
The name, I'm rubbish at naming products. It's probably, you know, going back to one of my weaknesses, one of my weaknesses is product naming. So I outsource the naming of the product. You know, back in the day, the first version of the migration tool was called the GroupWise to Google migration tool.
Right. Just
that was the name.
It did what it said.
It did what it says in the tin. It's very Ron Seal. And so, you know, anything that I do, it's very descriptive. And so I was creating a backup tool and outsourced the thought process to a marketing company, and they came back with lots of things. I even contacted my sister in Australia and said, look, I'm doing this. Just think of anything, just wacky names. Just Google was just created because it meant big. You know, let's be a little bit adventurous. Create a name that doesn't really describe anything. You know, I don't want a descriptive name anymore. Just give me something. Anyway, we were doing this backup tool, and the idea of the backup tool was to be better than the backup tools that were on the market. They'd gone through, you know, a number of acquisitions. They'd been acquired by different companies, and they'd just disappeared into very large organisations. The backup tools.
I know,
Workspace.
like the Backupify tools. And
and they were just,
they'd all been acquired.
And personally, I felt that they were just being neglected somewhat. So I thought there's an opportunity here to create a really good backup tool. And so the vision that I had was to retain the data in a Google format. So I'd researched how to extract files in that format, so that when you restored it, you weren't restoring a Microsoft Office file, because that to me just felt you know, an awkward solution. So we did all this research, we did all the work, started the product, developed the interface, querying the users to read their email and their files, and the name Patronum means guardian in Latin, and a bit of a film buff. So Bespin Labs, the company that I own, is a reference to Star Wars.
I did not know that.
And so Bespin is the planet. As we see on the t-shirt. And so Bespin is the planet that the Cloud City revolves around. So I like the idea of the Cloud City and Bespin and all that kind of stuff.
I need to tell my son this.
And it's a little bit of a nod to both my nerdiness as well as the cloud and all that kind of stuff. And so I like the idea of Patronum being non-Harry Potter related, which I know certain people have done Expecto Patronum as a kind of like a nod to Patronum, the product, but it means guardian. And so the aim of the product was to develop a backup tool. So like I said, we've done all this work, and then AFI came out, and I saw AFI and just went, oh,
that's really good.
that's better than good. That is amazing. They had investment. They'd started a few years before I'd started with the research, so they'd brought a product to market.
And they knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing. You know, they're not a huge organisation. I think they're still probably similar size to us. I think they're about 20, 25 people. But they were 2 to 3 years ahead of us. So I thought the product's great, and therefore I don't really want to be in a position to compete with something that is in the market sooner. And
so is that when you pivoted?
So I pivoted, and I went back to my early days back in
Well, you
university.
did say you were a one-trick pony.
Identity and access management. And so, yeah, I'm back on that one-trick idea, which was, managing lots and lots of users. And obviously, I've had a lot of experience of dealing with the issues, the challenges that customers have, and the questions that prevent sales. And so I thought, well, if I could create a tool that knocked down some of those barriers, but also created a value add, there was an opportunity. So I already had the interface and the
other bits.
The developers that I'd taken on had already learnt the Google APIs, and so it was a case of, do I just roll my toes up and just forget it and move on to something completely different, or do I put my head down and go back into identity and access management in the Google world? And that's exactly what I did.
Interesting.
Because the products that were like king in that area at the time, again, they were defocusing somewhat.
Yeah.
So you had you had the gorillas that were in the market, and they were spreading themselves extremely thin.
Well, you had products like Better Cloud who were like trying to be and have become maybe the jack of all trades, and it's a good solution in its own right. But integrating with Dropbox and Microsoft and all these different things, and some customers need that.
Absolutely.
But some don't.
Yeah.
Many don't.
And so that was our, that was my mantra. That was my USP. It was a case of, we're not going to do
that
Microsoft. Yeah. We're not going to add lots of different products. What we're going to do is we're going to do Google Workspace, and we're going to go as deep as we technically can. We're going to speak to customers, and we're going to get customers to tell us what's important to them. So we created a community, and we just built those features into the product.
Yeah, I did like how you did that you built the community, fairly early on, when you had a sort of a beta product, and it was people in the industry who I would rate extremely highly and who we know through our C2C groups and through just been in the industry for a decade. And, you had them in this constant feedback loop. I was in, one of those...
We set up a Google chat, we had Slack forums, we contributed to Reddit. We did a lot of stuff within different communities within the Google Workspace world.
And just getting that feedback.
Just getting that feedback and just saying, look, this is what we're doing, this is what we're planning. People were already thinking about similar kind of ideas. I know Steve Larson, who obviously we both know, he was contemplating using GAM as a mechanism of doing that from put a web interface on top of that.
I've seen that type of stuff for people trying to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the same. But in order to deliver the interface, you need to write to the APIs, and so you need to do a lot of work anyway. So we just developed the actual platform.
I think what I love about, one of the things I really love about the Patronum tool is the user interface feels like you're in Google, which is really nice.
Yeah, and that was by design.
Yeah.
One of the early things that we did back when it was a backup package is we picked Google Material Design as our framework. Yeah. It was in beta. It was hard. We had to get open source elements to plug the gaps that the beta didn't actually have at that time. And so it was constantly just working on the UI. So we had guys who we just brought on for the UI, and then we had all the
but it's great guys. Because there are other tools and solutions in the marketplace, who shall remain nameless, and not just in the admin side, but other solutions that are third-party solutions for Google that the interface lets the system down. It can do all the technical stuff. And I've had this with customers where even after training, they're like, I don't know if this, I had one customer that actually had a tool for a couple of years, and they were like, I don't think we need this, and they were literally ready to dump it. And we went through in detail, had done lots of training with the IT admins, but something just eventually clicked, and they were like, oh my God, we need this. And now they absolutely love it. But the interface let the system down because it wasn't obvious to the end users, to the IT admins, the value that it could bring.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that was a very clear direction for us. We wanted to make sure that whatever we created felt, googly. I think a lot of people want to be googly and want to make things that are googly. But by us using material design, by us using a lot of the same interface, same technology, same approach.
Yeah.
You know, being a partner from a selling perspective
Yeah.
gives me access to the roadmap.
Yeah.
And so we
So you
saw
can see where it's
visibility
going on,
of Google Contacts way before they came out, and I just loved that new design that they had in Google Contacts, and so I built,
nice.
you know, a nod to that inside Patronum, so that when Contacts did come out, it felt as if
normal.
it was just part and parcel of what we were doing.
Yeah. So what tends to be, you know, I know it's hard to narrow these things down, but like for those people out there that don't know what Patronum is, what are the kind of top 3 or 4 things that customers come to you that Patronum can solve?
It's weird. It's not something that we monitor or kind of keep an eye on. However,
even anecdotally,
from the customers that I talk to, and we talk to the majority of our customers, the first thing that they do is the first thing they set up is email signatures.
Yeah.
So they're probably paying for an email signature management solution today.
Yeah.
And so for the cost of Patronum,
they
can get rid of that and still have all the other benefits. We have a lot of customers who have just got Patronum purely for our directory sync service. So what this does is it reads the Google directory, and then it takes a copy of the contact information and stores it in the user's My Contacts. Now you kind of look and go, why is that important? Now what it gives you, there's a little hack inside Google, is if you label those contacts are then downloaded to your phone. So if you pick up your mobile device today, you can go into your Android contacts and you can see the people inside your company via the directory, but those aren't native contacts to your device. So if someone rings you from your company, it doesn't come up. You've got a telephone number. So if you're a bit like me, where you get a lot of cold calls and those kind of things, you'll see a mobile number, you don't quite recognise it. You'll probably cut it off or push it to voicemail.
As I did earlier on when we were
absolutely,
having coffee.
yeah.
I was like, don't recognise that number.
And so by taking the Google directory, which obviously has to be populated with people's contact details and mobile numbers, you can push those details to people's phones, and then you get a native experience on your phone. So we've got a lot of customers using that one feature.
Yeah. And I haven't come across a tool that does.
No, there were a number. BetterCloud that you mentioned previously, they had exactly the same feature.
Nice.
But Google switched from the Contacts API to the People API, and they shut the Contacts API off in December, January last year.
We had customers using it, and I remember talking to you about it, that your tool is the only one that
stopped
does
working.
it. Yeah.
And other solutions that had the same kind of offering, they pulled back from it as well. So we're now probably the only solution that can do that directory syncing successfully to people's mobile phones. So that's probably, I'd say, number 2 from a feature perspective. Other things that we do that
are
popular but unknown, if that makes sense. We had a customer. They were a retail organisation in the US, and they were acquiring new stores and growing pretty quickly. They're around about 10,000 users at the moment, and what we worked on with them was the ability to create Google Groups dynamically. So based on, if they have a new store, they populate their Google directory with the users from HR, and so the user will have the location, the name of the store, the region in their profile. And what we do is we take that information and we create Google Groups based on that. So you don't need to now create masses of Google Groups when you open a new store. Our system just takes care of that. It makes sure that the right people are in the right groups. If Fred decides to move from one store to the other, we take him out of the group that he was previously in and move him into the new group. And so that kind of creating of dynamic groups was just a huge hit. And now we've got a number of customers who have kind of got a similar business requirement. We've got a retailer in the US that I mentioned. We've got a real estate organisation based out of Las Vegas. They're doing exactly the same, where they're dynamically creating Google Groups based on not just the standard attributes that you have in the Google directory, but the extended attributes.
Yeah, and I think that sort of automated onboarding, offboarding, I know that's a huge piece of Patronum.
Completely, yeah.
But anything like that can assist in the onboarding, particularly for larger organizations, is just key. Do you know what I mean? Because trying to manage that for IT admins just within the Google admin panel can be a huge challenge.
Oh, it's complete. I mean, the way we look at Patronum is we should or a customer should be able to configure what we call a policy,
Yeah.
and then have
That's your automated
that's
workflow.
our automated kind of
Yeah.
workflow. So it's all policy based, and you should be able to then have zero touch admin.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's going to be what we call ad hoc, things that you're going to have to do on an ad hoc basis. But if you can automate the majority of things, giving people files based on a Google group, well, if you want to do that, you add them to the right Google groups. You remove them from the Google groups when they no longer need access to that certain information. If you can automate all of that, you don't really need to get involved in the cumbersome day-to-day stuff. So it's great for for large organizations. It's a no-brainer. But even an organization with 20 people, that one person who's kind of third of a job is to maintain the IT systems, that just goes away. So long as you are correctly configuring all of the policies, everything else just takes care of itself.